Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, and we're doing a discussion about the Genesys point changes! I don't know if this is something you want. Let me know in the comments if this is something you want to see, since Genesys is going to probably monthly be releasing point changes. I do want to be able to talk about their implications. I've seen the point changes already, I know what's affected, and I'll give you a little bit of a heads up about what I think is going to change as a result of these point changes, but in case you are not very closely following Genesys, hopefully this will be an interesting cross-section into what becomes playable, less playable, more playable as a result of these changes. First and foremost, I do want to point out that before we look at the points update, there was an expectations page posted in October, and this is actually all we got with respect to justifications for the hits at present. I imagine there will be probably a blog post in the coming days talking about the points proper, but basically it says, we want to shift severe performance outliers, generics that are being used frequently. We will potentially put some points onto cards that are new and were released without points, and we want to lower a significant amount of cool cards that we think are very playable. Also, they're getting rid of FTK combo pieces, so this is just the anti-Stevie Acteon. So let's check this out. Reversal quiz from 0 to 100. Admittedly, I imagine someone figured out an FTK. Reversal quiz is not too difficult of a card to FTK with. This is a mechanism by which it is not FTKable because a significant amount of the draw spells are at singleton points to stop a card like this from winning the game a la Magical Explosion. Dynamite and Banquet of Millions going up to 51 apiece, so you can't play both in the same deck. This boxes out, of course, the deck that was popular in Master Duel, in which you activate Banquet of Millions and flip Dynamite, which some people had seen success with on Dueling Book Ladder. So excited to see that gone as well. Black Garden from 0 to 51 is a little scary. I like this card a great deal and think it has some really cool applications in the format, most notably in that Black Garden Plants list that's empowered by a significant amount of the new Red Rose cards that just released. I think this is unfortunately quite good at stopping that deck from being as powerful as it would be otherwise, but it's on here because of the next card, Earthbound Immortal Asla Pisu, which burns based on the attack of opponent's cards. The two of them are classic FTK enabler. Gemknight Lapis Lazuli, also an FTK enabler. Gemknight is already fine in Genesys. Putting her to 51 means that it's really unlikely you're going to be able to get off an FTK or like a OTK that involves some amount of burn damage, which feels kind of unfun. Beals of the Diabolic Dragons to 100 is fine. This card is used for FTK shenanigans all over everywhere because if you donate it to your opponent, they have to activate mandatory effects. Of course, the classic FTK is with Red Eye's Flare Metal Dragon, and you aren't able to do that if Beals is at a hundo. Black-Winged Assault Dragon to 1, Bramble Rose Dragon to 1, and Red Eye's Flare Metal Dragon to 1. I mean, I guess you're probably figuring out what's going on there, right? Evgushki Gust Kraken to a hundo, and Gishki Aquamirror and Necromir and Mind Augus to 1. All box out a specific kind of Gishki deck, which aims to do the same thing the Gishki deck was doing in 2014. Just play an extremely long game aided by the availability of the loops that existed within that strategy. There are fewer hand traps, most notably Ash Blossom in Genesys, and for that reason, these cards were a little bit better. Ouroboros to 100. Puts it in line with Evil Swarm Ouroboros in the TCG, where it is unplayable as of this week. This card rips 2 cards out of the hand. For that reason, it does need to be hit. Number 69, Heraldry Quest from 0 to 1. I imagine there's an FTK with that card. It is one of those cards that potentially could have an FTK. It like copies individual effects, and that is kind of a scary thing to put on something. Question from 0 to 11. Not exactly sure what that box is out. This could probably be like 20 points and have the same outcome. They talk about this a little bit in the prior article, saying that they want some cards to just be incentivized not to play. The frustrating part about Question is that it punishes people who shuffle the order of their graveyard, which is something you're technically not allowed to do, but is done all the time anyway. So like it engineers a scenario where your opponent, through virtue of just playing the game normally, accidentally creates an irredeemable game state, and you get a judge called on you, and you're like, I'm trying to question, and they can't, you know, they've rearranged their graveyard, kind of like Drastic Drop-Off used to do if you draw a card and then shuffle your hand. And then last turn at a hundo is the Stevie tax. Get owned. Metamorphosis from 10 to 5. I've said it time and time again. Metamorphosis could be at 0 and would not be playable. There are not good targets for this card. Premature Burial from 25 to 7. Actually pretty appalling. This is a really good card. It's actually crazy that it precedes Monster Reborn from 15 to 10. Monster Reborn going to 10 ensures that it will never be played, but Premature Burial at 7 has all these extra applications that Monster Reborn doesn't. It loses to continuous continuous spell and trap destruction, but it can be looped with so many things. There's so many available cards get you this card, and I think chat has figured it out as well. Doom Z is a deck that fucks with equip spells. I think they can integrate Premature Burial into their combos. It might be that they want that to happen. Mirage to 0 is horrifying. So I don't know if you're familiar with Mirage of Nightmare, but it is a card that could technically come off the ban list. Games are fast enough that it's not that big of a deal. I am of the opinion of that. But I had actually been having a lot of fun with Mirage of Nightmare in Runic Radiant Typhoon. I was splashing for 3 copies of this card, and that probably wasn't competitive. I was probably supposed to be playing Pot of Greed and then maybe one Mirage of Nightmare, but I mean, getting it for free is a little scary. Card of Safe Return from 40 to 33 seems kind of normal. People will consider it at 33. I hope the Kosser deck becomes playable. I think that there are some really cool strategies that card enables, specifically a bunch of zombie decks. You know, finding it is a bit difficult, but who knows. Heavy Storm to 10 to Harpy's Feather Duster and Lightning Storm. That's down to 10 to 15 and 20 respectively. That all makes sense. Mass back row removal is really, really hard to come by. And for that reason, a lot of decks that rely on back row were kind of getting away with murder in this format. I'm thinking of like Odeon, for instance. This ensures that people who have points to spare will consider playing a card like Heavy Storm out of the board. 10 is pretty normal for a sideboard card. People were playing like Nibiru at that point total. So I wouldn't be particularly surprised to see that card pop up. Lightning Storm at 20 is actually a really sick value because that is a powerful ass card. Impulse to 25, I think probably still will not be played, but Spiral to 5 puts it in consideration in terms of the hand trap lineups. You know, Dominus Spiral is a pretty good card, and the decks that don't run afoul of its specific typing stipulations will be considering it. Nibiru to 5 is no joke, I think the most impactful change on this list. I'm going to be honest with you, Nibiru at 10 was pretty crazy. I knew a lot of people who were playing like Droll and Lockbird, DD Crow, and Nibiru as their hand traps of choice, especially people on archetypes that didn't have pointed cards in them. This really sucks for those decks because they got a specific benefit for playing a main deck that didn't include pointed cards by being able to play these outsized turn-ending hand traps that now are just being considered in every slot. I mean, 5 is almost nothing. I am really interested to see what happens as a result of this. There is an argument that this is good because the Nibiru at 10 meant people frequently weren't playing around Nibiru, but would get caught off guard by it. So it was like logically you weren't supposed to play around it. So when you lost to it, you felt really bad. But I don't think that is such a feels bad moment that it deserves going down to 5. Really shocking. Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill to 3 is interesting for sure. It means that that's going to become the premier hand trap in the format. That's a really good card, as is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit down to 3 as well. These 3-point hand traps are almost immediately suspect for play, and both of these are super strong. I'm excited to see these pop up. I think they will. Sauravis the Ancient and Ascendant to 3. So this card has applications as a card that insulates your linear play, and many people in different formats, Duel Links comes to mind, just straight up play it for that reason, a way to beat targeted negation. I think there are some decks that will consider this for sure. Baron Flirt to 80, maybe someone will play it. Some more point increases. Upstart Goblin to 3 is fine, just meant to box out the deep draw decks, as is Brow Huntsman of Darkworld. Pot of Extravagance 0 to 10 is the most telegraphed hit in the history of time. Trap Trick from 0 to 3. These trap decks probably do need a little more of an opportunity cost. Oh, well, I really liked Rescue Ace Impulse. Oh, I guess what they are talking about in this What to Expect document is that cards like Impulse are becoming generics and performing kind of at outsized rates. But to me, that was kind of the sweet spot for what a hand trap should be allowed to do. I really liked that Genesys had like a mascot, a hand trap that was a little below the curve, and that it was Impulse. I mean, now it's just going to be replaced in lists by real hand traps like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, or Ghost Mourner or Moonlit Chill, or fucking Nibiru. Oh man. We obviously can't talk about the Rescue Aces without also talking about the fact that this card was specifically powerful in Vanquish Soul, which is hurting for fires in a world where it can't play Ash Blossoms. It does matter for that, but I really liked that it was playable in everything else. Airlifter to 5 is fine. That deck is already prohibitively expensive. I can't believe what they've done to Rescue Ace. Dragon's Mind to 7. They specifically said they're going to hit the Solemn Judgment likes, which means they also hit Scolding and Iron Thunder. Super Poly to 13 makes sense. 10 is really low for that card. Grand Breakout to 3. Speedroid Terratop to 7. Both are meant to beat back like the rank 3 spam control deck that like plays a bunch of Goblin Bikers and goes wide on Xyz. I think that that is a fine strategy to be legal in the format, so I'm actually a little concerned about these hits. Nash Knight from 0 to 10 is to box out the 5 strategies, but most importantly, of course, K9, which I think it's hit a little later on as well. And Evelzor Lars is going to go to 20 as well. The de facto best rank 6 will force you to go a little deeper in the tank. There are a lot of good other rank 6s, so I'm not super concerned about that. Let's talk about Ame no Habakiri no Mitsurugi. So I'll be honest with you, these are really good hits. Mitsurugi was a really unexplored, but nonetheless incredibly powerful Genesis strategy. You would play one Habakiri, and then you'd play cards like Manju and Senju to find it. The card is very available. There are a ton of cards that search this card. They put down Ritual and Prayers to 51 apiece so that you can play still only one of them, but it doesn't take your entire point total, but you are not going to be able to play Habakiri no Mitsurugi with any of those, which is good. It was kind of frustrating that it was like, what can we play in Genesis? Well, Vanquish Soul is good, and Mitsurugi's not bad, you know. Utopia Dragonar to 80, Dragooblion to 80, Numeron Dragon to 21, Crimson Dragon to 80, Blazar Dragon to 21, Seifer to 21, and King Calamity to 21. Okay, so these are all changes that are meant to comport to the change to Crimson Dragon and Dragooblion, right? In fact, they've arranged it as such. It's like, we don't want you using Dragooblion to get into Numeron. We don't want you using Crimson Dragon to get into Blazar, Seifer, or Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity. But we don't want you to not make Crimson Dragon. You could theoretically do it. The one that's kind of fucking me up about this is Utopia Dragonar. That is a huge change to a deck that was a part of the metagame. And I gotta be honest, if monthly they are going to be willing to take out decks, I just really don't know what to say, right? It's just kind of frustrating for people who I know were intending to bring Utopia to Pittsburgh. I will be honest with you, there is a mechanism by which Dragonar can perform an FTK, and I imagine it was meant to box out that, but surely there was another way we could do this. All right, after that, we've got a bunch of floodgates. Grisaille Prison to 10, really good hit, by the way. This card is like the replacement D-Barrier. Flying C to 7 and Retaliating C to 5. I would like to see both of these statted at a hundo. These cards are totally frustrating and devastating against a whole host of like Xyz decks, and I mean, I just don't like these cards at all. I think their concept is if you point them, people won't be willing to devote points to them out of the sideboard, but I definitely will. Invoked Caliga to 100, they're like, just don't play this at all. And all 6 barrier statues up to 70. All right, fuck you too, dog. Next up is the promised hits to decks that are unpointed at present. Vanquish Soul Holly Su to 33, Xiaolong to 11, Raisin 11. All makes sense. All those cards should have been way higher earlier. I understand why they didn't do it or think they had to do it, but totally overperformed more than any other deck in Genesis format. Exosister Pax to 10 and Machias to 10 is sick, as is Ichika Sairi Hime, the other Exosister Spirit card that recently came out. This is cool. Pax, of course, isn't necessary, but if you want to play like 2 Machias, 3 Pax, 3 Hime, you still have a lot to play with. Exosister was totally unpointed before this, and so, I mean, I imagine that it is still a playable deck. Dinomorphia cards to 1 and to 1. This is to box them out with last turn, the Stevie Blunder tax. QQ Enagon is to the Hanko Chow tax. World Legacy Monstrosity, Leviton, Generator, Boss of Shadows, the Hanko Chow tax. Generator was a deck that just made VFD. The whole strategy was just making VFD and then winning. Now, that doesn't have to be the case. There's another build of Generator that's quite powerful that uses a different combo to get to a double enter Blatnir, which is still possible, though you can see a little further down, it is going to cost you a pretty penny. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Treasures of the Kings from 0 to 5, that's specifically to box out Man. I think they could have gone even farther. Nerve of the Power, Patron of Creation, that is to, I believe, box out Artmage, which is an exceptionally powerful deck, if not the best deck in the format. But one of the reasons it's the best deck is because you can play without respect for Nibiru. You know, people weren't splashing for it. Now that they're splashing for it more, I think this deck is going to have a much harder time in the meta. Of course, you could also play Nerva in non-Artmage decks, which I think is probably like, it probably falls into the generics setup. Dodo Warrior to 7. God, they hate Jaxal. Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss up to 20. And then these two are really frustrating. Totem Bird to 3 and Cicada King to 5. So these are the only hits to Radiant Typhoon, which is otherwise an exceptionally powerful deck. Now, I'll be clear with you. This deck does make Totem Bird and Cicada King most games, but I mean, 2 things. One, it doesn't have to. And secondly, this is a negligible point cost. I mean, Cicada King to 5. I'll play 2 Cicada King, go to 10, 2 Totem Bird, go to 6. And then I have, what, 84 more points to play with? And Mirage is at 0. I can play that too. I was specifically thinking about playing this at Pittsburgh, but I expected it to be hit more. And for that reason, I wasn't pulling the trigger. I may go grab them now. K904 Noroi to 15. Yokel to 15. Werewolf to 10. They don't want you playing K9. Phantom Fortress Ether Blatnir. This is the Dire tax. Trishula Dragon of the Ice Barrier. So this going to 13, I'm actually really interested about because it is a hand loop card, which is why they probably don't want it as legal as it could be. But it is also a part of Ice Barrier, which is a crazy strong deck with 0 main deck hits. So Trish at 3 was the only point value in this deck. Now they have 13. I mean, that's still a lot of points to work with while boxing out the ability for Trish to loop over and over again, but you know what it is. Noah Punk Foxy Tune to 5. Punk was a deck with very, very few hits, so happy to see that. And Megalith Anastasis to 33. This was another deck with 0 hits that was totally overperforming. This is also really weird because Megalith, I think, had 0 tops at YCSs, but was everywhere on ladder. So I am excited to see them taking like Dueling Book into account when they do this. Followed on the Virtuous to 15. They were open about this. They said this card would be a 3 of in every single deck, so it will get pointed. 15 feels like a good place for it. I would have preferred 10, to be honest. I'll be on a 20. Titanclad to 10. Sprint to 10. Granging you all to 10. Brigand to 10. Dragon that Devours the Dogma to 10. Lubellion down to 10. Mirror Jade down to 10. Branded Fusion to 40. Mercurier to 5. Masquerade to 16. Holy shit. But you know what's fucking crazy? I don't even think Branded is dead. I think dedicated Branded players will still be able to play this strategy. You will have to do different stuff. Obviously, you can't be playing Sprind the Iron Dash Dragon in it. You got a sick discount on Lubellion and Mirror Jade. I don't know. I legitimately think Branded is still playable in a post-hit environment. And then finally, some generics have been switched around. Reinforcement of the Army to 35, Emergency Teleport to 35, Tanky to 35, Fossil Dig to 35, getting all the Rotas back to a lower number. Nightmare Apprentice to 20, Tenyi Spear to Shunna to 13, the Hidden City to 13, that's crazy, Union Hanger to 25, Emergence to 25, and then these ones, which I think are really funny, they were open about the fact that in testing, there was just a Gladiator pilot that was saucing them, and there was a Ninja pilot that was saucing them. So they mentioned this in the previous series of discussions, and as a result, they are removing the Gizzy hit, Proving Ground to 25, Rejection to 10, Tamer Editor up, because Tamer Editor is the one that lets you just cheat out guys, Maizen to 5, Yagamaru to 5. That's as close to an oops, we screwed up as I can see. Fucking Yagamaru, why was he ever pointed in the first place? Starter to 10, Phantom of Yubel to 76, but Nightmare Throne down to 25. They just don't want you to be able to play those two cards together, but they do want you to be able to have Nightmare Throne. Brave Squirmer to 0, so that you can now play it, but you can't play it with the Phantom of Yubel Nightmare Throne anyway, because those already add up to 101. And Vanishing Lanius. Did I miss something? Why was Vanishing Lanius even on the list? Are you guys familiar with Vanishing Lanius? Dyer, throw that up. It's just a random extender. It's the green one, right? Okay. So how do I feel about this list? I mean, this is I've been so positive about this format. I think this might surprise some of you, but I'm feeling a little concerned. I imagine that they will post a description of why they made these changes specifically instead of the generic one that we got a couple of days ago, probably tomorrow. And I imagine that if I upload this tonight, it may integrate some of the concerns that I have right now and will voice, because they've been super, super responsive to community consensuses. The first thing I'll say is this is a lot of hits. I sure hope this is not how many hits are going to be in every list. This is like a huge shakeup to the metagame in a ton of ways, and I want to be able for my Genesis deck to have longevity. I won't feel like investing in this format if I have to pick a new deck every month to learn. It's not going to alert to me if that's the case. I don't need to be able to one-trick Branded for 5 years, but I would like a couple of months of playability of my strategy. And I think that this telegraphs that may not be the case. Some strategies that are very playable are just going to be pointed almost immediately. Now, again, this could just be because it is the first one and we played a trillion games they weren't prepared for, right? So it could be that everyone afterwards is supposed to be smaller. I mean, certainly there's a lot of FTK enablers on here. They don't have to ban a second time. Secondly, I'm a little concerned that some of the point changes run counter to the original intent of the format. Obviously, I can't see into the minds of the Genesis devs, but I thought things like keeping back row removal high, Heavy Storm, Harpy's Feather Duster, Lightning Storm, was a feature, not a bug. That they were like, this is a format in which we want you to consider trap cards even in combo decks a la 2012 Yu-Gi-Oh! But here they are just being like, no, everything was like a min-maxing, and we do want you to do that. In terms of the hand trap changes, I really liked that Impulse was the unofficial mascot of Genesis. I thought it was cool. I know it has applications in Vanquish Soul, but you hit Vanquish Soul a million other ways. Is it necessary to take this guy behind the shed? Especially for a deck like Rescue Ace that you've pointed something else down to incentivize play for. I really thought that was cool. And in terms of the hand traps that are now playable, I mean, do we need another format where Ghost Ogre and Ghost Mourner are being considered? We sat through Snake Eye format. Nibiru at 5 strikes me as a really really scary change. Like, if your deck doesn't have a Nibiru plan, you're really in hot water now. I think you can probably expect every single deck to find 15 points for this card. Like, I had a lot of faith that, like, oh my god, think how cool it's going to be playing in a format where the top hand traps are Skullmeister, DD Crow, and Rescue Ace Impulse. But as of this list, it looks like the top hand traps are going to be Nibiru, Droll, and Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. That doesn't sound nearly as fun. There's a couple of decks I don't really understand why they have a bone to pick with. This rank 3 strategy that like they're boxing out via Terror Top is kind of frustrating. I think that that's like a really cool deck that I liked a great deal. I don't know why priority is being given to Radiant Typhoon, but at the same time we're hitting other strategies to be less competent. The branded thing is interesting in that it drastically changes how the deck is played and built, but I also don't know why they needed to do all of this. All of this amounts to branded is slightly different than it already was. Why 14 cards to accomplish that? The only one I really cared about was the Fallen and the Virtuous. Now, to be clear, I do still have a lot of faith in Genesys. I think despite the length of this point update, a significant amount of these changes are being made to box out really unfun play patterns that I wouldn't want to sit across from anyway. I just remain a little concerned that not only do they want the gameplay to resemble something other than advanced, they also understand that the Haymaker turn-ending hand traps and lingering effects are a lot of the reason why players are frustrated. I would like to see Nibiru and Droll increased massively and Impulse brought back down to 0. But I can't deny that there are a lot of interesting changes on this list that I am totally in favor of. Cautious optimism as ever, faith a little bit shaken as a result of this list. Hopefully they will release something tomorrow that will give a little more insight into why they changed what they changed. Oh, and hope that they're less expansive every single time. Holy shit.